Welcome to the Local Live this Thursday, February 5th, 2015. We're bringing you the latest news from the Mamaroneck, Larchmont, and Rhinebeck communities. I'm Rebecca Berman, and we have a great show for you today. Let's get started. What do you think about marijuana legalization? Stay tuned for our live roundtable discussion. A former Mamaroneck private school teacher is facing child pornography charges. More details shortly. And which team made our varsity LMC TV Play of the Week? Tired of winter? Start on your beach body now. This week, Push Fitness is in the spotlight. Meet Bella, our cutest pet of the week. She's ready for a new home. Tonight, we are following a developing story about child pornography and a former private school teacher in Mamaroneck. According to various news sources, including News Channel 12 and USA Today, a former teacher at the Westchester Day School, a private school in Mamaroneck, has been arrested on child pornography charges. 62-year-old Lyle Camlett of Mount Vernon was arrested on Monday and appeared in court in White Plains. He was released on bail and is due back on February 25th. Camlett is accused of allegedly ordering child pornographic movies between 2008 and 2010 and allegedly mailing some to his former workplace, the Westchester Day School, from which he retired in 2012. Camlett also allegedly created child pornography videos discovered when law enforcement searched his home. The United States Attorney's Office of New York State and the U.S. Postal Service inspectors carried out the investigation. If convicted, Camlett could get a maximum of 20 years in prison for receiving child porn and up to 10 years for possession, along with fines of up to $250,000 for each charge. His lawyer, James Roth, told the media that he and Camlett are going to vigorously contest these charges in court. In other news, the education research site niche.com published its annual report on the best public high schools in New York State. Rhinebeck High School ranks in 15th place out of 100, and Mamaroneck High School ranked 45th. Now it's time for In the Media, where we tell you what is trending in our local online news sources.
Boy, this picture is getting around. Local Oscar nominees, then teenagers at Mamaroneck High School editing video. The story is in the Loop, along with a current photo of the accomplished filmmakers on the red carpet. The duo also collaborated on Capote. The Patch reports on the topic of next week's summit meeting. It's STEM, short for science, technology, engineering, math, a driving force in our schools. The February 10th discussion features Dr. Robert Schaps, the superintendent of Mamaroneck Schools, and Margaret Kaufer. She's chairperson of the STEM Alliance of Larchmont Mamaroneck. The meeting will run from 7:45 in the morning till 9 at Nautilus Diner. The cost is $8, and that's just for breakfast. The Daily Voice notes an upcoming art exhibit at MHS called AP Concentration Show. It opens February 11th with a reception at 6 p.m. The show is curated, installed, and, well, that night anyway, catered entirely by about 35 Mamaroneck High School students enrolled in the AP Studio Art program. They work in photography, clay, drawing, and painting. The public is invited. The Mamaroneck Review has a little section called What's Going On? Well, this Sunday, for example, Larchmont welcomes distinguished violinist Kensho Watanabe as a guest of the Friends of the Larchmont Public Library. The concert begins at 4 p.m. in the Social Hall at Larchmont Temple. That's located at the corner of Willow and Larchmont Avenues. Refreshments will be served at 3:30. Come early, grab a seat, enjoy the concert. Well, these are just a few of the local stories that caught my eye this week. Check them out and others in the media. I'm Mike Witch.
Don't go anywhere. Coming up, we're talking about marijuana on our roundtable discussion.
I'm going to step off the limb. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Marijuana's legalization, decriminalization, medical use, or something else? Where do we stand on grass? Are we lost in the weeds, and where should we be? Do we let the kids toke or not? Lots of questions and bad puns, but as always, we want to hear from you. You can call, email, or tweet. The contact information is on the screen. I'm Maura Carlin, and with me are County Legislator Catherine Parker and Judge Christie Derrico. Thank you, ladies, for joining us tonight. We're going to start with where we are on cannabis now. Last summer, Governor Cuomo signed into law a very limited medical marijuana for non-smoking products. Beyond that, is there anything else going on with respect to marijuana?
I'll start, but first of all, that law I think will become effective January 1, 2016.
Oh, so it's another year.
So there's still sort of a waiting period with that, and as you correctly said, it's very limited, and it's been stated that it will not be smoked. You have to have one of 10 different medical conditions in order to use it, and there will be 5 distributors that can have up to 4 places where it will be distributed. So it's going to be a very regulated program, and I think it just demonstrates that when we're talking about marijuana in New York State, unlike some other areas of the country, New York is moving, I think, very cautiously.
Is New York moving more slowly than the rest of the country?
Well, I don't think you could lump it all in one basket. We all read the RAND report on the Netherlands, and they were studying the Netherlands for California's steps towards legalizing marijuana. So I think this is a good example of each state doing what is in that particular state's best interest rather than jumping on the bandwagon with everyone else.
Well, is New York State discussing more decriminalization or legalization of recreational marijuana?
Yeah, actually there's a woman in the Assembly from Manhattan, Liz Kruger. She just has introduced a bill for recreational marijuana just a few weeks ago. So there is more talk, but my sense of things where New York is going, the big question is really over regulation. How do you regulate this $45 billion industry and all the questions that arise from that? And then the legal aspect of it, the law enforcement. How do you then have those two pieces together? I think that, in my opinion, I think it makes a lot of sense for New York to really look at this. Again, the models that are available right now, with Washington State and Colorado, may not be the right models for us. So I think it's good that there's a conversation that's building, community to community, people to people, but I think it's going to be a long process. I don't think that they're going to pull the trigger in Albany anytime soon.
Well, and I also think we need to look at the state not as a whole, but in component parts. I was surprised to learn that marijuana charges are the largest number of arrests in New York City. I didn't know that when we were preparing for this. And so let's just imagine if we lowered the standard and made this legal, what would that do to the element in New York City? Giuliani started a trend where small crimes lead to big crimes. That was his slogan. So he cracked down on small offenses such as this, and there was a spike in the number of arrests. But I think you'd have to, I'm sure there would be an approach where you would evaluate the impact for each particular area. Certainly changing something in Albany would be a very different impact than it would be in New York City, where there's a lot of tourists, other elements.
Well, interestingly enough, you said that the proposal actually came out of New York City.
It did. And New York City, so on another level, New York is also sort of taking a step forward. I think Mayor de Blasio had announced that they were going to be writing tickets as opposed to making arrests for people that were caught with, I think, less than 25 grams of marijuana. So,
well, isn't that actually what's in the laws right now, that it's non-criminal for certain small amounts and it's broken down by fines for first offense, second offense, third offense?
Well, when you come into the criminal justice system, don't forget, you could be coming in for a variety of things. You could get a moving violation, you could get a violation, you can get a code violation, and then you go further up the chain with misdemeanors and, of course, felonies being the highest type of charge. The argument, as I've seen it, is that even if you're coming into the criminal justice system with a violation level, you're still in the system. And one thing that I've noticed in reading this material is the age that we're encountering individuals getting charged with these violations. And there is always a push to not have youngsters involved in the criminal justice system. Once they get started, it's just the seed that grows. And sitting on the Criminal Advisory Board, they evaluate, for example, if you live in a city and you're a 15-year-old doing something, your chances of getting arrested may be statistically higher than if you live in a village or a town. Now, that may be nothing more than just the dynamic of being in a city. It's city police officers. It's a totally different situation. You live in a small community, you're most likely going to know the officer. They're going to call your parents and handle it slightly differently. So I think that that's another factor in evaluating how this is being handled. But once they come into the court system, even if it's a violation, they probably still feel like a criminal on some level.
And you bring up a really good point, which is for youngsters who are getting stopped, could be for a variety of offenses. You know, they have to turn their pockets inside out, and that's if the marijuana falls out, then they could get that charge that ends up going on their arrest record.
Well, that's actually, it raises a different question about telling your kids, you know, if you're pulled over and the cop asks to search you or your car, do you let them?
You know,
when, I mean, if there's nothing in plain view, there's not probable cause, what do you say?
Well, let me ask this. Three women here. How many of us have given our children the speech on what to do if encountered by law enforcement? Well, your children are younger, but
yes.
It's not something you think
you
about
do
very
you
often.
say whatever you're going to say respectfully.
But truth, okay. But I don't think I'm educating them on civil rights and whether they need a search warrant to go into the car or not. I'm not.
They know that anyway, whether you tell them or not.
Do. They probably do, but I did hear an interesting story coming out of Rye that the youngsters were aware that the officers couldn't enter the home without a search warrant, and they gave the police officers a bit of a hard time. And I was quite impressed that they knew their rights.
And
that was a house party, yes.
That was a rumor. I wasn't sure if it was true, but I was pretty impressed. In any event, getting back to your point, again, there's an encounter with an officer, that's step one. Then it could turn into something more if something fell out of their pocket, so to speak. So these are all things that I'm sure are being evaluated in how we are gauging this activity.
And it's something like that also, if they get that type of record, I mean, I think it can start a youngster for a future failure. I mean, they're not going to get jobs if they have that on their criminal record. I think it's really starts in motion a whole downward spiral. So do we want this to be the beginning of a downward spiral?
There's a couple ways you could look at this. Okay, first of all, you have a youngster, and Maura's children are older, and my children are older than your children. But
most of mine.
Most of yours. A percentage of yours are over a certain age, and maybe they've had certain experiences, but then by association, your younger children are almost grouped into that from having seen things. But let's say there's an experience of a house party, per se, and maybe police get involved, and maybe there's that encounter. Do you think your children are going to be glib about future encounters with police officers, or are they going to be more guarded in their actions and maybe try to avoid those encounters? So there's two ways you can look at it. And I don't know if that evaluation is different based upon socioeconomics, race, et cetera. Maybe that's the case. Maybe a child of a certain group, looks at it one way, and then maybe children of another group look at it different.
Let's get back to marijuana, though. And in fact, we have a reporter who went on the streets in our community to find out how people here felt about legalization.
Should marijuana be legalized? This has been a highly criticized question that has been asked for years, and there never seems to be a right answer. We took to the streets of Mamaroneck to get the opinions of local residents.
It could be used for medical purposes, but we're not just saying that you can go around smoking, it just has to be used for good reasons. It's not hurting anybody. It's like hospitals give it out to people who got cards, you know what I mean? And
no, it's not good. It's, you know, that's a little complicated. You know? See, do you need something like for the medicine? Okay, but you need a prescription, right?
It's detrimental to the society and to the individual. The person who becomes involved in addictive behavior will have a much diminished horizon in life and will become involved in various dysfunctions and troubles, unable to be focused, unable to hold a job, unable to set goals, not able to live as a productive, responsible person.
Whatever makes the people happy, you know? And that's about all I can say.
Are you pro-legalization or against it? No matter your answer, get ready for the debate. For the Local Live, I'm John Schifano, signing off.
Well, I'm going to put both of you on the spot. How do you feel?
Well, I am sworn to uphold the laws of the state of New York and of the United States of America, so my opinion on some level is irrelevant. I will uphold the law, whatever it may be.
Can I be a judge now? So let me start by saying, first of all, it's a state issue, not a county issue, but I will say this, and it's interesting to say that now we'll have the debate. I have the debate within myself. You know, honestly, I can see two sides of it. You know, one, certainly, as I talked about before, the regulation, the regulatory system that needs to be in place, I think is a really critical component. And if it's not regulated in a similar way, say, to the wine industry, I think it could be very, very problematic. So, you know, there are so many levels to this question, and I don't think it just falls to what you think of marijuana as a recreational drug. I think it's far more complicated than that, because there's so many dollars at stake too. As I said, it's a $45 billion industry. And if you get in a, say you had Big Tobacco taking this over, you know, Big Tobacco as a profit company, as profit companies, right, you know, they're trying to maximize their profit. So are they advertising to get people to smoke more? Is it, you know, going to take on a whole nother level?
So those are issues if you're getting into the business aspect of it.
Which can't be separated, it really can't be separated out from the question of, do you legalize marijuana? Okay. I think it's really...
Well, let me ask you this. Is it different if you just purely decriminalize the use in small amounts?
No, I don't think you can separate it, because you will have to get it from somewhere. So right now, by buying marijuana when it is illegal, you are participating in a chain of illegal activities from illegal sources in countries where they may, you know, not treat individuals appropriately in the drug industry. So that is one argument that people for legalization say, let's tax it, let's make money off it, let's regulate it.
Because people are going to do it anyway.
They're going to do it anyway. So that is one argument. But I think some of the other factors we've been discussing are for societal reasons, health reasons, parenting reasons. Is that what we want to have happen? And one thing that I read that was interesting, first of all, the age that you enter any tobacco, alcohol, drugs, the age you start doing it is a huge factor in whether you're going to have a problem. Your background, certain factors such as that. So I think limiting exposure at a certain age is very important, and some argue that if it's legalized, it diminishes your ability to control that.
I would love to ask how you limit, you know, exposure to it, because it seems to be so prevalent. But we do have an email, and I do want to get to that. How much marijuana are you allowed to have on your person for it to be a felony? And I'll add to that, or a misdemeanor.
Suitcase, pillowcase.
That much?
Well, I don't have the law in front of me. You can Google it, but it's a larger quantity. I mean, what you're talking about in legalization is similar to what de Blasio is talking about, quantities of personal use versus dealing. And I think they're discussing in the states that have done it, you're certainly getting licenses to have quantities that would be
No, I'm talking about what the law is in New York right now. I think that's what they're asking.
It's a very small quantity. Unfortunately, I don't have personal experience with how much a joint weighs, et cetera, but it's basically a personal use quantity.
Okay.
And I defer to the judge on that one.
Don't do that. You're supposed to know, Catherine. You're in charge of the legislative component.
We talked briefly about citations, you know, instead of being arrested and not being charged with a crime. It's almost handled like a
traffic ticket.
A traffic ticket.
Right.
I've also heard of situations where that happens and then the person who has smoked has been told to drive home. Is that a mixed message, or what's going on there? And have you seen that in your courtroom?
When I speak to the high school students, that's actually one of my slides. There's a perception that smoking and driving is okay, and drinking and driving isn't. And there's a variety of reasons. Maybe it's less detectable if you're smoking, but law enforcement is trained to notice impairment. And if you're driving stoned, you are impaired. That's a different section than driving while intoxicated.
I'm talking about the opposite, where the police officer says, go on.
I cannot comment. There's a variety of different officers. They make personal judgments. I mean, a person shouldn't be driving and be impaired, and I would think if you were smoking pot, you would be impaired.
However little it may be.
You know, nowadays, what I keep hearing is that marijuana is not the same marijuana from when we were younger. It's much stronger and more potent. And, you know, they also say that really for developing brains that it can be far more
altering the
DNA. than it is for an adult. So to your point also about perception of, you know, whether they have the capacity for things like driving and their judgment, you know, I really think that is a very important point. And again, this is why I think it's good that New York is kind of taking a very cautious approach, because certainly that is a real question. If you can't test to determine, if there isn't a test like a breathalyzer, to determine that somebody has marijuana in their system, you know, how are you actually going to enforce in that capacity?
Well, there are charts dealing with alcohol that show your weight, if you've had food, over time, and how the alcohol will affect you, and it's within a certain parameter, give or take. Due to what Catherine pointed out, difference in potencies, I don't know if those charts are as reliable with marijuana. If you're dealing with someone who's been pulled over and is suspected of using drugs, you have to get a blood test to confirm the actual amount of impairment, which for prosecution is a totally different avenue. We see a far less driving while impaired by drugs than we do driving while intoxicated, because as Catherine pointed out, it would appear that it's an easier prosecution. You get there's certain impairment tests. Not that you can't use some of the tests with drugs, but it's not as easy to detect, it would appear at this point, unless they come up with new technology compared to driving while intoxicated.
Okay, what do you think parents should say to kids about marijuana? Should it be, you know, zero tolerance? Should you be more tolerant under certain circumstances? I know you have to uphold the laws of the state.
That wasn't what I was going to say. I'm thinking, are my children watching this? That's not really fair that you're recording this and they might watch this. You start, Catherine.
Sure. You know, it's an interesting question. We already have mind-altering, you know, recreational vices a lot of people have in their homes. Alcohol, tobacco. Look, people have prescription drugs in their drug cabinet that their kids get into. All these things are accessible. I think that parents need to be aware that, you know, kids watch them, see how they handle these legalized vices, if, you know, for lack of a better word. And I think that they, if they see the adults around them sort of treating alcohol with respect and treating it as something that you don't abuse your body with it, then I think that the next part of the conversation, talking about illicit drugs, becomes a lot easier because you don't sound like a hypocrite, you know, and I think that that's kind of goes hand in hand. So, you know, I guess my kids are a little younger, so maybe I'm slightly off the hook, although my daughter, you know, she's in high school, she's a freshman, and you know, she told me recently about somebody she was friends with in elementary school who's now in rehab. That's a freshman. So you know, it's there. I know it's there. We talk about those sort of challenges, and I feel that you know, my daughter has a good head on her shoulders.
But you don't have to talk about your own kids.
Yeah.
Should you let your kids smoke at home if you know they're going to smoke?
No.
I know, you know, there are people who argue otherwise, that you're not going to get caught, so there's not going to be, you know, criminal activity. You know, they're safe. I mean, that's the contrary argument.
Well, furthering what Catherine was talking about, I wonder how many kids have their first experience with marijuana from marijuana they've taken from their parents. Sorry, that's just a little...
okay.
It's a great question.
No, I wonder...
Do you think that goes on?
Absolutely.
I would guess that's probably right too.
It's a statistic. I would imagine it's on the scale.
Yeah.
But it goes to what Catherine said. I mean, you lead by example. And one friend of mine had a child doing DARE, and the mother said, what did you learn in DARE today? And she said, well, I learned that parents blow off steam by drinking wine because they're stressed at work. And she said, what? This is what you learned at DARE? I think the kid extrapolated, but you know, these are the things you have to think about. But really, when we're talking about this issue, the big fear factor is that it's a gateway drug. And that has been something that I think in part it's been debunked on some level if you define gateway as one drug leading to the other. And what I've read is that alcohol and tobacco tend to be first exposure over marijuana. But in looking at the broader picture and the incident of drug use, you know, do we move forward with marijuana and hope that we can separate that from the growing problem of things like heroin, which has become a terrible epidemic growing out of what you get in your medicine cabinet?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the real issue as I see it.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question also about telling your kids. Do you tell them what you may or may not have done? And I will preface this by saying that many years ago, must have been 15 years ago, I went to a parenting seminar, and the person running it said, you shouldn't tell your kids whether you did or whether you didn't, because if you didn't, they'll say you don't understand, and if you did, they'll take it as license to go ahead. I looked at the Radar website, and they suggest that you don't tell your kid if you did. What do you think?
Depends on the kid. I mean, do you have a kid like Catherine's
Well, but you can't
daughter?
tell one kid and not tell another kid.
No, well,
in the same family.
In the same family, yes.
I don't know about that. I think each kid is different. I have 4 children. They're each different. And
but don't they talk to each other occasionally?
It depends. And at what age do you talk to a child? There's certainly something you could say to one that you say.
Can we go to a point that you brought up
Sure.
earlier, or actually maybe
Good
it was
use of
Christie.
deflection.
Yeah. So stress, right? Yeah. Students feeling stress. Oh. You were talking about, you know, parents drinking wine, you know, women drinking wine to release some of that stress and tension, blow it off. And, you know, I think about our kids and how they are feeling so much stress, high school kids and the challenges. And so some mind-altering experience that can make them temporarily not feel that stress.
Well, some kids will say they do
tempting.
it to help them relax.
Right.
I've heard parents, you know, saying that's what they're being told.
Yeah, and for a variety of other reasons, the girls worrying about weight. You know, there's this perception of the calories of alcohol, but you might want to eat after you do it. I'm not sure how that fleshes out, but these are true points. They're definitely trying to blow off steam.
There is something that has always puzzled me, personally.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yes, I'm sure you are. About why head shops and other stores can sell the paraphernalia like bongs and vaporizers freely. I've really never understood that. I mean, it's not you don't have anyone using a bong for tobacco.
They have some arguable alternative use, I imagine.
Hookahs, which can be used in some cultures.
Right.
They're used to smoke tobacco, or there's some vaporizers also that are used for...
Yes, but no one buying Snoop Dogg's products.
Yeah, I can tell you though, as a parent,
Okay.
if you do find those things in your home, do not believe your children when they tell you that it is for the alternative uses. Okay. It's strictly for one use.
Or that they belong to someone else?
Oh, that one too, no.
We are actually out of time. It goes so quickly.
How did that happen?
I know.
Yes.
I want to thank both of you, County Legislator Catherine Parker, Judge Christie Derrico, for joining us. Next week on The Local Live, we will be talking about love in honor of Valentine's Day. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more community stories in a moment.
Good evening, Larchmont and Mamaroneck. I'm Anthony Carlo. Welcome to The Local Live. We connect you to your officials, members of the community, and the cutest pet of the week. Only news show that brings you a weekly update on the stories happening around you.
This week in sports, the Mamaroneck Tigers ice hockey team trailed the rival Suffern Mounties late in third period. Senior defenseman Ryan LeBlanc then found his younger brother Connor for the game-tying goal in the LMC Varsity Sports Play of the Week.
To the ice. LeBlanc is just so strong. Nice play, LeBlanc to LeBlanc. Oh, nice move from LeBlanc, gets it in, goal! Beautiful move from the right to the left by Connor LeBlanc for the game-tying goal with 2 minutes and 9 seconds to go in the third period.
Yeah, and the faces on the Suffern bench right now they're just complete awe of what Connor LeBlanc just pulled off.
Did you know that a new fitness club just opened in Mamaroneck? Kat Galliano was there, and here's the story.
Are you tired of this cold, wet weather? Well, I am too, so let's get those beach bodies ready with Push Fitness.
Push Fitness is celebrating its opening week, and fitness trainer and partner Eddie Guideman is excited to share with everyone why working out at a smaller gym like Push is a unique experience.
That's the big advantage for me as a trainer. I worked at a big gym. The big difference here is that I can work with you a lot more and get you towards your goals, and you can probably afford to work with me a lot more. So we're eliminating that middleman, and you'll get a lot more contact with me, either one-on-one or in a small group environment, because of the programs that we have here.
Push offers different programs, from those just getting to their New Year's resolutions to those who exercise daily.
So for the personal training, we sell them in packages like any gym does. You can buy a single session, a 5-pack or a 10-pack in half an hours and hours. The main thing that probably all the viewers will be interested in are the classes. So you can come in and drop in for $10 a class for Zumba and $15 a class for our fitness classes. They're kind of similar to a boot camp or a circuit class. We call them Push Max.
Push's goal is to make it a community gym where clients can come in and feel comfortable and encouraged in their workouts. We asked Eddie and his assistant Ellie Coleman to demonstrate some of the moves clients can expect in the various classes.
So at the beginning of each month at Push Fitness, the whole studio, the whole community is going to repeat this workout, and it's 3 simple exercises: push-ups, burpees, and then knee to opposite elbow exercise, which is to challenge your core.
In celebration of their opening week, Push Fitness is offering introductory rates to new clients.
So we have a Groupon like everyone else. You can look us up on Groupon.com, and if you search Push Fitness of Westchester, we'll come up. It's $19 for 2 weeks of unlimited classes. All of our classes are boot camp, push max classes, and our Zumba, whichever ones you want. So feel free to look us up on Groupon.
So now you know, if you're looking for a more personalized gym experience, check out Push Fitness, located at 154 East Boston Post Road, across the street from Brewers. For the Local Live, this is Kat Galliano. Meet our pet of the week, Bella. She is a gorgeous teenage hound mixed Rhodesian Ridgeback. She is super friendly and snuggly. She's learning to be the best girl ever. If you want to adopt her, you can contact the New Rochelle Humane Society. Just go to www.newrochellehumanesociety.org. And that's it for this week's news on the Local Live. Show some love and tune in for next week for our Valentine's Day episode as the roundtable discusses love through the generations. If you have any comments or questions, email us at thelocallive@lmctv.org. And if you'd like to volunteer, please email our senior news producer, Shayla Navarro, at snavarro@lmctv.org. We hope you enjoyed tonight's show. We are here every Thursday, same time, same place. It's Rebecca Berman. Good night.
Tell us what you think. In person, over the phone, online. Watch and hear yourself on TV. You tell us, we air it. This is The Local Live.